It is no secret that 2024 was a massively eventful year for hip-hop music. Almost every mainstream rap artist dropped an album this year. Eminem, Don Toliver, Kanye twice, Metro Boomin twice, Future 3 times, etc. The Kendrick Lamar and Drake feud earlier this year. Young Thug is finally freed. Playboi Carti actually dropped music this year. Still waiting on the album, but whatever. And the re-release of Travis Scott's Days Before Rodeo on all DSPs made 2024 a generational year for the rap community. But while the quantity of projects was merciful, the quality wasn't always that great. I mean, hell, Yeat dropped twice this year. So today, I've decided to look back at the rap albums I've listened to in 2024 and list my top 5 best and worst albums of 2024. Now, it's important to keep in mind that I've not heard a good portion of rap albums released this year. If they're not shown on screen right now, I have not heard it. So I don't want to see any comments asking where Blue Lips by Schoolboy Q is, because while I'm sure it's great, I have just not heard it. It's also important to note that I'm recording this on November 5th, 2024. So for all I know, Playboi Carti, A$AP Rocky, and hell, even Frank Ocean could all drop tomorrow and their albums wouldn't make this list. And before we begin, just remember I am no certified music critic. I'm just a 15-year-old who really likes Travis Scott, okay? So without further ado, don't forget to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you are new, and let's get into my top 5 best and worst rap albums of 2024. Kid Cudi really showcased absolutely nothing on this album. Aside from a few standout production points, thank you Pharrell, and my GOAT Travis Scott absolutely killing his features on this album, this one's a colorful mess. Not only is the album 21 songs with no real substance, but the tracklist is super inconsistent. The album is filled with bloat, and I'm not really interested in hearing Kid Cudi mumble his way through these uninspired beats and barely any emotion through any of the verses he lays out here. This album was a slog to get through and really proved to me that Kid Cudi has no creative direction left in him to make a semi-engaging album anymore. The best song on this album is At the Party, and the worst song is X and Cud. Just let X rest, man. I genuinely never thought I'd see the day where a 21 Savage album was in my rotation this much, but American Dream proved its staying power, having released all the way in the beginning of this year and still landing itself in my top 5 albums for 2024. This album really showed growth for 21 Savage. I not only think this is 21's best solo album, but I think this album is better than both Savage modes, and among 21's discography is really only under Her Loss. And even then, 21 himself is better on this album than Her Loss. 21 is offering new flows for once, engaging hooks, and a great array of features on this album too. Travis Scott, Brent Faiyaz, Tommy Newport, and more. The beats on this album all hit hard, especially when Metro had his hands on production on some of the tracks here. 21 has never sounded more hungry when rapping, and this was truly a pleasant surprise for 21, as I've never been too big on his discography. The best song on this album is Nina, and the worst song is Pop Your Shit. I genuinely wonder what Yeat does that makes him such a potent artist at this point. How is he not just another Carti or Uzi? What about him is original? What does he do sonically that warrants a 22-song album where almost every single song sounds the exact same? Nothing about this album is interesting, and if anything, reverts backwards from his other record this year, 2093, which actually showed progress for Yeat and a creative direction that I was ready to see, but now we're back to the same old, and it just makes this record all the more useless. We didn't need this. We aren't getting anything we haven't heard before from Yeat, and more importantly, it's a great regression from where he was heading. The best song on this album is On One, I guess, and the worst song is Geek Time. Denzel Curry is on one hell of a generational run. Taboo is one of the best albums of 2018, with great narrative and rapping performances. And 2022's Melt My Eyes, See Your Future is a phenomenal album with some of Denzel's best songs and in contention for the best album of 2022 in my opinion. And with this new release, King of the Mischievous South Volume 2, Denzel is really proving that even without some deeper narrative and just a pure hard-hitting rap album, he can still deliver on every entertaining front. The production on this album is great. It's raunchy and each track feels grand with the horns in the tracks like Black Flag Freestyle. The features here are also great. That Mexican OT and A$AP Rocky are my personal favorites, but almost every feature here, which there are a lot of, adds to the track list. If you're searching for an album with well-constructed beats and hard-hitting rap performances, this is the album for you. The best song on this album is Black Flag Freestyle, and the worst song is Set It. It is so sad to see who was once your favorite artist drop an album of this quality. Vultures 2 is not finished. I'm not even gonna rate it like a finished product because it's not. The mixing is horrible, the production is bad, the vocals are constantly drowned out by the instrumentation, and most of these are demo tracks still left unfinished. The track 530 has its entire second half dedicated to Kanye laying his vocal melodies down and not actually saying anything. It's genuinely baffling how Kanye thought it was okay to release an album in this state. The song Sky City has an AI Kanye verse, which isn't only baffling to me, but also makes me wonder how much of this album is even fully finished. Kanye himself is such a bad lead artist on this album, as he delivers some of the worst verses of his entire career here, and his singing on songs like Husband are genuinely painful to get through. Ty Dolla $ign is barely on the album, which confuses me so much because the album cover is literally Ty Dolla $ign holding a picture frame of his brother who's currently in jail. Yet not only is that concept barely brought up on the album, but that topic is far more interesting than North West speaking in Japanese for whatever reason. This album is an unfinished mess and makes Vultures 1 look like T-Pab in comparison. The best song on this album is Field Trip and the worst song is Husband. Going into Hearthstone Psycho, I didn't have any expectations really. I thought Don Toliver's album catalog up to this point was slightly below average, and I thought he shined on features like Can't Say or Too Many Nights. But man, Hearthstone Psycho was a pleasant surprise. First, I want to talk about this album's best quality, which is by far the production. The production on this album is great, combining elements of trap, psychedelic rock, and hip-hop to create such a great soundscape on this album. Almost every song sounds different from one another, but not too disconnected from each other, which creates a perfect blend of variety here. The rock elements, especially on songs like Bandit and Tore Up, work so well, and Don Toliver really fits that style. The more basic trap sounds we are used to with songs like Purple Rain and Ice Age are great too, and even a dancehall type song like New Drop is a welcome addition that sounds so good. The features on this album across the board are great, with my personal favorites being Tizo Touchdown on Backstreets and surprisingly Kodak Black on Brotherstone, who delivers such an enticing hook and verse and makes the song for me too. And of course, Don Toliver himself. His rapping and singing vocals are at their best here, and his versatility is seriously underrated. Hearthstone Psycho was a great album, and I can't wait to see where Don Toliver goes from here. The best song on the album is Brotherstone, and the worst song is Geeked Up. In all honesty, I always knew this album would be bad. Coming so short after the mediocre Pink Tape, I had almost no hope that Uzi would deliver anything creatively interesting or even as close to as good as the original Eternal Take, which wasn't even that great in my opinion. All Uzi is proving to me on this album is that he's fallen off. I can't even blame most of the problems with this album on stuff like mixing or being unfinished similar to Vultures 2, even though the mixing is very bad and I'm sure Uzi didn't care enough to fine-tune some tracks here. The worst part is Uzi's vocal performance. His vocals when singing and rapping sound so muddy and raunchy, and when he tries to do that deeper voice on songs like Meteor Man, it is so bad. Seriously, it sounds like he has a dick stuck in his throat. The production here is so mediocre, no beat is filled with that iconic trap sound Uzi brought on Love is Rage 2, but even when you aren't comparing this album to his previous work, it's still a bad album. This album sounds nothing like the original Eternal Take, the name is nothing more than a cash grab because the soundscape of this album is something else entirely. I genuinely think it's time to say Lil Uzi Vert has fallen off, and no matter what he promises to drop later down the line like Love is Rage 3, I've lost all interest in Uzi's music after the worst addition to his mediocre output after the last few years. The best song on this album is Lightyear, and the worst song is Meteor Man. In contrast to Uzi, Future came back from a lackluster output before this album and came out with one of the best trap albums of the 2020s decade. Out of the 3 projects Future's put out this year, We Don't Trust You was definitely the best one, as it's the least bloated with a concise 17 tracks with great consistency. On this record, Future's delivering catchy flows and great rapping performances, and his hooks are so enticing here. And a big part of that is Metro's production. What makes Metro such a good producer is that he's able to particularly craft beats for each individual artist he collaborates with, and Future is one of those artists who he has such a great chemistry with, and is able to make almost every style of song work here. Like, Future's rapping over a soul beat, which is not what I was expecting. The features here, while few, are all great. Both Travis features are up there for my favorite of the entire year. Playboi Carti delivers his best feature this year, if we're excluding Timeless, and Rick Ross delivers an amazing verse here. But of course, we can't talk about features without mentioning the infamous Like That verse from Kendrick Lamar, the song that kicked off the whole beef, and man is it a phenomenal song. One of the best produced Metro beats, and Future's hook is great too. Overall, We Don't Trust You was a moment for sure and was Future's best modern output in a while. The best song on this album is Young Metro, and the worst song is Where My Twin At. Welp, here it is. The worst album I've listened to in 2024 is undoubtedly Y2K by Ice Spice. While some may argue albums like Vultures 2 or Eternal Take 2 are objectively way worse because they're unfinished, fail on almost every creative front, at least there's something. They have a semblance of direction while very minimal, and both have standout tracks. None of that is present on Y2K, and it's because of the lead artist, Ice Spice. Everyone who has an album on the worst list so far has at least one thing in common: genuine talent. Yes, even Yeat offers more than anything Ice Spice does on this album. With albums like Insano or Vultures 2, they're coming from two very legendary artists who've already proven that they're great, and while not as good anymore, you can at least go back to their earlier work and remember why you like them again. But Ice Spice was mediocre for her first few singles, then her first EP, and a straight up ass on her debut album. The album is a slim 10 songs, which would normally be an issue, but with an album of this quality, I'm really not complaining. Let's start with, I guess, the best aspect of the album, which are the features. They're fine. They aren't anything special, but they still massively outperform Ice Spice on this album. But almost everything else about this album is trash. The production is so boring, it's the most basic New York drill beats, and the one standout beat, Did It First, is wasted by the two most lifeless artists. So even the production can't save this album. Ice Spice generally uses the same flow on almost every track here, and topically, it's one of the most boring listens of the year. I can only listen to so much of Ice Spice spitting literal shit bars before I go crazy. And the album is only 24 minutes, less than half an hour, and I still feel like I wasted my time. The only thing that the album does right is the album cover putting the Y2K logo on the trash can because it's literally hot garbage. The best song on this album is Oh Shit, and the worst song is Thank You the Shit, Fart. My number one rap album of the year is Chromacopia. When I first listened to this album, I initially thought the album was great. Nothing fantastic aside from a few standout tracks like Ratata, Darling I, and Thought I Was Dead, but I was comfortable putting this at number 5 on my best albums of the year list. However, with time, this album just kept getting better and better. I found myself listening to it every day before I got to school, and more tracks like Hey Jane, I Killed You, Like Him, and Balloon really started growing on me. I'm confident in saying that out of all the albums I've listened to this year, this is the best produced album. Every single production choice on this album is masterfully executed, and the fact that it was almost entirely composed by Tyler himself is a crazy feat. The features on this album are also so good too. Tizo Touchdown brings his great vocals on Darling I, Daniel Caesar offering vocals on the hooks of Saint Chroma and Take Your Mask Off, Tyler assembling the Ghetto Avengers for short but hard-hitting verses on Sticky, Schoolboy Q's enticing rap verse on Thought I Was Dead, Lola Young's beautiful vocals on the hook of Like Him, and Dochi's eccentric feature on Balloon all add to the album in a great way. And Tyler himself provides great storytelling, rapping, and singing performances all across this album. The best showcase of this is the track Like Him, where after years of creating tracks expressing his distaste for his father not being present in his life, it's revealed that Tyler's father has always wanted to be involved in his life, and it was his mother who pushed him away. That was genuinely a shock for people who've been following Tyler's narrative since the start of his career, and it was told in such a beautiful track. Overall, Chromacopia is aging like fine wine, and I'm confident Tyler will get his 3rd Grammy win with this album. The best track on Chromacopia was a really hard decision, but I'm gonna go with Darling I. And the worst track, which by no means is bad, it's just my least favorite, is Tomorrow. Well, that's my list for my top 5 favorite and least favorite albums of 2024. As of writing this segment, the Grammy nominations for Best Rap Album have been revealed, and to see projects like Hearthstone Psycho not make it, but a project like The Death of Slim Shady or the mediocre output that was My Delete Later from J. Cole making it instead was a weird choice. But nonetheless, the Grammys don't mean anything as they're responsible for putting The Heist over Good Kid Mad City and Invasion of Privacy over Daytona, Swimming, and Astroworld, so their opinion doesn't matter. If you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already, and comment down below if you agree with my picks, and if not, tell me yours in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.